future we cherish is a theme that epitomed the 38-year rule of the NRM-NRA government. 26th of January, this government celebrated 38 years of ruling this country and liberating us from the tears that this country fell in the years of the 1970s and the 1980s. So joining me to discuss this very thrilling and interesting conversation is a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen who will help us unpack the topic. So just quickly, as a way of introduction, I'll let them introduce themselves, just from my right hand here straight to my extreme right. They'll go ahead and say hello and introduce themselves, and we can delve right into the conversation. Gentlemen, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Drake. I'm humbled to be back here. I'm Fred Magala, a student of law from Islamic University in Uganda, and also a finalist, serving as the Justice and Constitutional Affairs Minister in the interim student government over there. And I'm glad that today we are here to talk about more of what has been done, even though I think it would be better to speak nothing because there is nothing to talk about.
Okay. As I usually say, your opinions are definitely your opinions, and you have every right to hold on to it. But from my point of view, and my work is to make sure the conversation is fronted, and we'll get your justifications why you say it is actually not right for us to talk about this because nothing has happened over a span of 38 years. Very welcome and very happy to have you here, Fred Magala.
Welcome, sir.
The only lady on the show, very happy to have you here once again. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Drake. It's a pleasure to be here once again. It's very interesting to panel beat on ideas and just engage with like-minded people to learn and unlearn. My name is Apili Cynthia Esther, a student of Makerere University Business School, in my first year doing leadership and governance. I'm excited to be here to panel beat, to critique and understand what the shortcomings are, whether there is anything worth celebration, and what actually needs to be done.
All right.
Thank you.
Definitely looking forward to having that interesting and intriguing conversation with you and get into your insights. The gentleman, most welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for the welcome. Firstly, my name is Rubambura Onesmus Kakuhi. I'm the chairperson of, I'm a finalist at Makerere doing Bachelor of Commerce, majoring in accounting. I'm the chairperson of FDC Makerere chapter, and I'm very glad to be here.
Very happy to have you here, Honorable Sir, Chairman. Who are we to have you? Nonetheless, let's just begin the conversation. 38 years down the road, critics say that this government has registered nothing but corruption, has registered nothing but increased literacy levels. However, others would argue otherwise, that this government has registered tremendous success. Just recently, we have concluded with the NRM summit. A couple of girls have enrolled in schools. Numerous Ugandans have graduated. Makerere is just concluding its graduation. Over 12,000 students coming out of school. Juxtapose it with the then numbers of students who are coming out of school. So it's an even playing field. So I'll begin with you, Fred. In your introduction, you made mention that it's actually not worth having this conversation because this government has registered nothing. And let's just start from the perspective of governance. This government came into power in the year 1986. This year, celebrating the Liberation Day under the theme, Building a Future We Cherish, which emanated from the 2021-2026 manifesto under the theme, Securing Our Future. How has the governance of this country evolved over time? Do we see progress, or rather do we see backward steps taken?
Okay, thank you, Drake. As mentioned earlier, I think all statements are always subject to critique and also interpretation. So the interpretation at times varies. So majorly, if you look at the NRM government coming into power around the same time we have talked about, they came up with what referred to as the 10-point program. And this 10-point program had the 10 major things that this government wanted to tackle and bring to life, because in the past governments, all these were neglected, ranging from democracy, talking about the economy, the security, and all that. But as regarding leadership, democracy, all this, to me, I think it is a myth, because I think we are just covering the bread with a lot of margarine, other than having the bread itself being eaten as it is. Preferably, if you look at the leadership sphere of our nation, where we had the multi-party system being brought back to life, or being brought or introduced into Uganda, where we now wanted to have multiple political parties into our political sphere. It indeed did us well that democracy was being revamped. And what we all needed was to see people participate, and then people exercising their will by choosing the leaders they want. They want to represent them either at parliamentary level, as president, as chairman, LC1, and the rest. But the question of the day will be that, yes, all that was revived, and democracy was literally brought at the forefront. But don't you think there is something behind, again, a check by the party or by the real persons who brought it back? Because the question is, have we had any presidential election that has not been contested up to date? I think we have had various presidential election petitions. What does that have to talk to us? That is one. These various presidential election petitions and also parliamentary election petitions, they have the same issues. Ballot stuffing, right? Monetizing of elections, torturing opponents. To date, we still see the same things, right? We are looking at target laws being put into place, whereas there are elections in place, but then you bring about POMA, where a person to maybe associate, come up with maybe a meeting or a political rally, that person must seek permission from the police. Literally, it is like seeking permission from the incumbent. Trust me, what does this talk about the leadership? A lot of questions are at hand, and the question is, has NRM in the 38 years achieved anything as regards leadership and democracy or not? So my internal interpretation is simple, that at first they came up with the best strategy, making sure that every person is involved into leadership and into the democratization of Uganda by bringing about the multi-party system, and then people would vote. But then the system has failed to be cleaned up. It is dirty. A lot of people have lost lives in this. Political opponents are being tortured day in, day out. Others are put under house arrest for no good reason. Others are not given airtime on different radio stations. Yet all political opponents have to be treated the same. I've seen Dr. Retired Chiza Besigye being pulled out of a radio station because they don't want him to communicate. Radios are put off grid because they don't want him to communicate to his voters. Political rallies are being put off. People are being beaten and tortured. People are being driven away in drones. Does any of us here know where Chibalama is? I'm not going political. I'm not affiliating myself to any, but do we know where Chibalama is? These people are being tortured somewhere. They are being put somewhere. Past the hours they have to be in detention. Now, what does that talk to us? Is the leadership and political sphere in Uganda safe? NRM, yes, brought back that aspect to us. It gave us the power to vote for our leaders. But indeed, do we vote for them in the right way? Is the system okay? Does the system favor us? A lot of lives have been lost in the same. It is very monetized. People are being, the whole system. Imagine the appointing authority is the president for the chairman of the Electoral Commission.
But excuse me, but the president has those appointing powers in the constitution, which the constitution is the supreme law of the land. But nonetheless, I'll just hold you there and engage the lady over there. Cynthia, when you listen to the submissions of Fred articulates clearly that when this government came into power in the year 1986, in January, that liberation brought a prospect of change. And that is what prompted them to go into that guerrilla war, which ushered them into governance in this country. And my question was in line of governance. This government registered tremendous success in the first days in office, going ahead to promulgate the 1995 Constitution, which provides for Chapter 4 that gives us the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights that captures the aspect of governance. Now, his argument then comes that irrespective of all the niceties that this government has fronted to us, we have seen them fall short of the reality. That one, in aspect relating to democracy, there is ballot stuffing, there is abuse of human rights, and other atrocities atrocities in quotes that this government has committed. We're still speaking governance, and I would like you to continue further assessing this because we have a constitution, the supreme law of the land, a question that I forward to you, that provides for the president being the appointing authority, that provides for prohibition on torture, among others, which in numerous cases we have seen various people taking the government to competent courts of law and winning against the government. In my opinion, I think democracy is being practiced and the rights of the people and the voices of the people are being upheld. But nonetheless, we'd like to hear your submissions as regards to governance.
Okay, so one, as a student of leadership and governance, there's something I need to explain with the aspect of leadership. There is always a prime to everything, and I think this is basic knowledge. You see, there is a reason as to why we are able to celebrate people like Nelson Mandela. Not necessarily because they didn't have a bad side to how their leadership operated, not because even as individuals they didn't have a negative aspect to their character. But it's just because they knew when they had to step down. One thing I think that the government fails to realize, or what just even the nation itself, is that people evolve, ideas evolve, and principles change depending on what circumstances are going to be present in that situation. There is this, let me just use this case of study, and it's very funny. In the North, most of the people that vote are the mature people. And when you tell them, we need to have change or we need to vote someone else into power, the first thing these people are going to tell you is, this man brought us peace. We don't want to go back to that same stature of war. But when you say that to a child from the North, like me personally, I'm going to say, yes, there are good things that came with it, but I think it's time to move on from something. It doesn't have to be a constant. The reason as to why we are able to critique the government so much and why the shortcomings are so many and why we can't even celebrate the success within it is because it's a constant. And you're not giving people the space to evolve and to grow and to nurture different aspects. What you're doing is to sort of suffocate them within that system because of what you benefit from it.
But on that point, you're saying it's a constant. We have numerous government programs that have come in place that look at innovation, that looks at creativity, that looks at people going all out. So is it your view that this government has entirely put people in that state of that constant argument that you're trying to bring, and yet we are seeing various programs that are rising that look at people freely engaging?
Okay, but I think when I say it's a constant, in as much as these programs are rolled out, who are the individuals behind them? Who are the people that spearhead these things? We have very many competent youth. I mean, you're here, we are here in a panel, but which people spearhead most of these government programs? It's the same consistent faces time and again. There is no growth within this government.
Inclusion is your argument.
It's even far from inclusion, because one can easily argue that there is inclusion because of the programs that we see rolling out. There are youth activities all around. So the aspect on inclusion is far from what I'm saying. But the aspect is who is fronting these programs or who is spearheading these programs. The people that you're including, do they actually have a ground to spearhead some of these activities, to speak their mind on some of these activities, to be present when the draft of these programs are coming up? No, we are included into something. We don't know how it originated or what systematic changes are trying to be made within that particular program you're rolling out. It's just a matter of inclusion, and that's just it. There is no premise to which you're accommodating growth within that particular system. So my issue is, the government has been so much in our faces with constant people, and there is no evolvement. That is why, even with the successes that are registered, it's hard for us to celebrate them because the negatives are outweighing what the successes are. And I think this is extremely problematic because you're creating a population where people are disillusioned. You're creating a population where people feel like there is nothing good you can do anymore, and the best you can do is just leave. And I think that is problematic because you're even taking away the basic admiration or the basic imitation of some of the better principles that would have moved with. Because the aspect of change doesn't mean that everything is eroded or ignored. It means that there are some constant principles that per se NRM government has valued and has made stand out with clear achievements. That means we are able to pick that up as we evolve, as we grow, know how to modify it. But now, the stature of change that you create is one where we don't want to associate with anything that comes with that. In as much as there would be brilliant people, brilliant ideas, the argument is the entire system is now dead. And I think that is problematic when you create that sort of disillusionment because there are many successes that have been registered. Let's look at the ability for women to go to, girls to go to school, to have a sustained education.
We shall get to that.
Yeah.
But I just wanted you to focus on the leadership and governance, which both of you have done justice to it. I think the panel should have been more balanced when we had someone pro-government, because it looks like we have people who are anti-government. But nonetheless, these are views that all of you have, and you are citizens of this country, and you know exactly what you're feeling on ground and how exactly you want to be led. But let me get to you, Onesmus. The president in his address talked about peace.
Yeah.
She makes an argument that this government fronts peace every time in our faces, that we brought for you peace. And as a girl from northern Uganda, the old people are comfortable with it because there is what they call peace. The region has experienced tremendous atrocities committed to the people of northern Uganda. And for them, they're okay with the peace that they're having now. But then the question is, should peace be the only idea that they found all the time to justify their actions even when they are wrong?
Looking at the 38-year rule, I think it has impacted Uganda both positively and negatively in regards to leadership and governance. First of all, there is the truth is the country operates outside the formal system in a way that there is NRM, that's a political party in rule. Then there are people in NRM who have a say on national politics, and you don't question that. Totally out of the formal framework. So the 38-year rule, I would say in some way it has impacted us positively, in some way it has been very negative. Because talking in terms of like the public debt, by the time the NRM took over government, there was a public debt of 2 billion, and apparently we are running to $2 billion, and apparently we're running to 250 billion US dollars. That's really, really hard. That's a lot. Our public debt is really, really so big. And you will see the reasons why they borrow. Some of these reasons are not genuine. Some money is borrowed and they withdraw they borrow the money. Then they say, no, we don't need this money now, after applying for the money. And now reversing the whole loan, that's going to cost us money. So I feel like this is not where the NRA would have been.
The actual ideologies of the NRA couldn't reflect what is present
What is
today.
present right now. Yeah. It's totally contrary. Very, very contrary. Because I listened to President Museveni's speech when they had just captured power, and it was totally a different man from this one. Totally a different. This President Museveni meets the other one, they are totally two different people. And the other President Museveni commented about our public debt when he had just taken over power.
But people evolve. You see, if you're not in leadership, there is a
Yeah.
Exactly.
there are the ideal ideas that you have
Yeah.
that you
true.
think you can front.
Yeah, but
But
in
when
what
you're in
way-
that seat, the reality is settled in. And I think
Exactly.
that is what he's
Yeah,
experiencing.
but in what way are you evolving? In what way are you evolving? You see, a country can be under. The truth is, if I'm to give you my honest opinion, the 38-year rule, I would describe it as the time of oppression.
Really?
Yes, Uganda is totally oppressed.
Let me just take you on that point.
Exactly.
Our history.
From the way they touch the constitution, how they handle our constitution.
All right. On that point, maybe I think Magala is interested in this conversation, all of you and everyone.
Yeah.
But I'm going to speak for the government today. You see, our country's history, if you read the preamble of the Constitution, it will clearly tell you
tyranny.
Our Constitution was trying to remedy the tyranny, the oppression. We got independence in the year 1962. I won't speak for Obote's government because Obote's government, in my opinion, was good. The period of tyranny began in the periods of 1971 to 1979. Then later on, in between there, where we had like 5 different presidents, but not Obote to government. But let's focus on the rule of Amin. Amin being our best performing president, irrespective of that, the argument behind the violation of human rights, because it's the citizens that make a state. It's among the components that make a state,
True.
that you have a permanent population.
Yeah.
Now, where you have violation of human rights and people cannot speak freely, you expel Asians because they are running businesses and they're doing more better than the individuals. In my opinion, I think today we speak more freely. Someone can go on Twitter and rant about the president, and they're freely speaking. So from my perspective, I think we are not that oppressed.
Yeah, true.
In my opinion, I think
True.
it's fair. But your opinion is your opinion, which is highly respected.
So you're trying to imply that during Idi Amin's time, it was worse than this?
Yes.
The fact is
that your point?
The thing is, we have had conversations with people who have lived in that time. I'm just a recent born of yesterday.
Yeah.
I didn't live in that time, but I'm someone also who reads a lot of literature.
Yeah.
In comparison to what we have today, we're in better days, I must say.
That's-
But nonetheless, I am not supposed to be speaking on this, but please proceed.
Okay. No, you cannot say we're on better days, because honestly, everything that was done, everything that is claimed that was bad and done by His Excellency Idi Amin has been done by this government present day 4 times worse.
Facts and proof to that.
Yes. Well, let us not talk like we're not seeing.
No, someone is not seeing because
No, these things are clear. These things are clear. People are being abducted. I can be getting out of here and you people never see me again.
It's all right.
Like those things are happening.
Yeah.
People are being abducted. Then you find out that now the person chairing the committee, the person supposed to chair the whole commission to handle Ugandan coffee, find someone in the first family. Like the first family is running the first family is running the country. You get? That's not what is supposed to be there.
But they're competent.
Nonetheless, I just want to address something. I think not especially because I'm pro-government or anything like that, but your justifications don't seem to serve the argument that this is a time you would call a time of oppression. I think even in the midst of everything that is happening, your arguments can't be taken away because these are things we factually see. But the element of oppression, I think we choose to blindly ignore the freedoms that we have as individuals within this nation. The idea behind comparison with Idi Amin's government and the current government, I don't think as an opposition leader, as Joel Senyon, you would even go and sit at a TV station and critique the government and ably move. I think in as much as those violations are evident, they are not as traverse as what existed before. So there is that element of seeking light in the deepest of situations. Your ability to go on Twitter and rant and critique and be a citizen journalist, I think these are elements that you wouldn't really find on a normal day from an oppressive
Yeah,
government.
true,
And that's light we need to really pick out of the dimmest of those situations.
Yeah, true. But as we also pick that light, we also need to be cognizant of the fact that we
Exactly.
cannot settle for less,
Yeah.
which you're
I
trying to
think
front.
I think I need to make you see this oppression. I think that's what I
No,
need
it's
to
all right. It's all right. But
I think I
No,
now
no.
need to say
Onesmus.
this scenario.
No.
This
it's-
scenario. I think that's how far
it's
you
all
want
right.
to understand
It's all right.
oppression.
But definitely you bring the
Speaking
point
realistically,
home. Yeah.
speaking realistically, the oppression is like, the truth is, we have been so oppressed. We have been captured. We are under state capture. That's the honest truth.
That's a very huge word to say. But
Okay,
nonetheless,
Exactly.
let me just
Okay,
get
yes, that's a huge word to say, but
yeah. Let me just get to my brother here. Education. The president commented that as he was driving to Jinja, he met a couple of kids who said they're out of school because they don't have school fees. And as he was making his very always articulate and very witty and passionate speech, he said that when this government came into power, we brought UPE, and I will make sure people get free education. Someone sarcastically commented, your wife is the Minister of Education and Sports. So what is the issue? But nonetheless, that's not the point here.
Yeah.
The point at hand is education. Statistics have it that out of 10 pupils that join primary school, 6 of them graduate, leave, that is, they go to secondary school or even finish P7. Now, where do those 4 drop off to? But even after, when they finish primary school, few of them progress to higher levels of higher learning. But we've also seen this is evident in the numbers of people who graduate compared to the number of people that enroll. So I want us to take the conversation now to education. This government, when they came, they introduced Uganda universal primary education, universal secondary education, with the aim of enhancing education in this country and eradicating illiteracy. Have they achieved that?
Thank you, Drake. I think first and foremost, before we argue anything about education, we could first look back and understand what happened before Museveni or before the NRM government took over. I think to a larger extent, we have an improved education system, better than that in the past days before NRM came into power. However, it is subject to a lot of critiques because different problems that have come up at different times require different solutions. When NRM had just come into power, the main issues affecting the education system, one was the number of girls that are into school, right? Then 2, the infrastructure. 3, then also making sure the number of schools per region, right? Because during those days where education was only for those that were privileged, we only knew schools like Botiki, King's College, Budo, those Weranyanji, Intare. Now those schools, they're the only schools that were known. But with the coming of NRM government in power, we saw schools coming up, bringing up the UPE system, where at least now each region had more schools. But where did the government go wrong when it comes to this system? Just like he said, that at times you find out that every system is run by a family member, whether distant or near or close. The issue here is that UPE was a very good strategy, but who is running it and how is it being run? Teachers are being enrolled into the system. The question is, do they teach?
Are they paid?
Are they paid?
Exactly.
Under which circumstances are they working? Currently, you know of the industrial action they are taking. They are saying we are not going back to school until our salaries have been increased. You find a teacher who taught a lawyer is still staying in a grass-thatched house. You find a teacher who taught a doctor can't have access to just the basic medical services at any health center 4, health center 3 near him. What does that talk to us? that the education system literally is down,
True.
starting from the syllabus. What are we being taught? How is it applicable? Because typically they are just trying to modernize our syllabus. I think senior 1 to senior 4 currently. But to me, again, it is not giving. They're trying to modernize it, but there are no facilities being provided in order to support this particular syllabus.
True.
You are awarding a student marks for sports, but the score is just on 100 by 100. Literally, where would those extra co-curricular activities be done? Right? You were talking about education, but again, you find out that UPE is phrasing out because literally there are no facilities there. Teachers are not going to class. If they go to class, the next day they are demonstrating. Their salaries have not gone to their account for the last 3 months. Teachers are not being paid, or their salaries are too low. You get it? At the end of the day, you find that there is no straight way of literally supervising even these teachers. What comes next? The failing of students, raping of students. At the end of the day, UPE is now a total mess. The seed system that was brought also for secondary is also becoming a mess, because you find that there are no teachers there. For you to become a government secondary teacher, you need connections. If you can't have money, maybe to bribe somewhere, you cannot get that post. What does it mean? We are losing skilled teachers to private institutions, which private institutions can only be afforded by the middle class and those ones in government that are above the middle class. Literally a school where a kindergarten student is paying 1 point something and above.
1.8.
Now, what about the other UPE students? Are they getting, how will they even compete on the market together? Look at the life of Subi. Had the parent of Subi not persisted to bring this child up in the modest way, try to borrow here and there, cut wood, wash for people to get money in order to pay for Subi's fees. As we're laughing at Subi coming with a metallic suitcase, he had the passion because the parent at least knew what the boy wanted and what he wanted his boy to be. At the end of the day, the issues that Mami Subi addressed are the issues that the government needs to address. But the government is just merely not looking at that. Literally, education is being privatized. Those who don't have money cannot now attain education. Why? Even if they try to, at the end of the day, Intare is going to say, we are not admitting people who have 8 points and
Below.
Above.
you get it? What does it mean? It means that this particular student in UPE who has got 12 and is the best there cannot even be admitted to such a school. So what are the problems? What are the different shortcomings at hand that are affecting the education system in the 38-year old NRM government? 1, issues of salaries to the teachers. There is no way you can milk a cow that you are not giving peelings. Literally, you cannot force teachers to teach without them being what? They also have families to care for. 2, the infrastructure. Very many schools don't have toilets. If they have, they don't even have those special toilets for the handicapped or for the special kids, right? You find classes are very dusty. At the end of the day, if a student is to learn Monday to Monday, meaning he has to have flu for the rest of the term. 3, the supervision is totally poor. But why is the supervision poor? Because even the access to those schools is too poor. The government has not made the laws to access to those to access such schools. You find out that even a child to come to school has to cross maybe a river somewhere and there is no bridge. He has to maybe get a log where they have to sit in order to access. You have seen those things on at the news, right? You have watched such. Then 4, look at the money, look at the budget that is usually given to the education system.
It's not prioritized.
It is not prioritized. Let me give you an example. Who is the deputy
Oh,
of the Minister of Education? One of the deputies, I think, has the best schools.
Jesse Moingo owns SETA. One of SETA schools.
he's a
Do we
state
have
minister.
do we have any school, any secondary school government that is at least quarter the status of SETA? Sorry to say. Anyway,
Yeah.
That is another main issue.
But sorry, that's
So
the conclusion.
what does, as I conclude, the main issue here is that also in the human resource, we need competent people. We don't need people that the president knows. We need competent people. We have people that have succeeded in the education system. We have doctors. We have those ones with master degrees, very good ones. We have people that can literally drive our education system. So we don't need to literally appoint a minister because they gave us kids. No. We need a minister of education on merit.
All right. Cynthia, my brother makes very strong arguments with a very, should I say, somber, painful tone. Very unfortunate that we as young people discuss issues relating to education. And not everyone in this country is privileged or has persistent parents like that of Suvi, or even is lucky enough to reach where some of us have reached. This country now, every day, statistics have it that over 3,800 people make the age of 18. But out of all that, how productive are we even utilizing that age bracket?
Syllabus
Shall
question.
get to that. Let's still focus on education. He mentioned factors that are affecting the education, that this government that had very brilliant ideas at the beginning are failing on those factors. He mentions salaries, infrastructure, supervision, and lastly, the human resource. Is it qualified? Is it based on merit, or it's based on technical know-how? Now, my question to you is on twofold. The first fold will relate to the effect that it has on the quality of education and the quality of the citizenry. But then two, I would like you to speak with respect to affirmative action in regards to education.
So I think one, when we talk about the education system, and like I said before, I want to use this example I used in a debate. The argument was you find that politicians make, for example, decisions or policies and ignore what these consequences are going to be in the far ahead, right? My argument was I don't think making policies that address the problems in that time is a problem. And they are not good to foresee all the consequences. What then happens is the metric to evaluate and understand that since things change and evolve, can we also look at what needs to change in that system to better it? If you brought a solution that solved the problem now, we know that that solution is not going to address another problem come next year.
Yes.
So what are you doing to evaluate to address that problem? But I think also another thing that our education system lacks when it comes to affirmative action is sustainability. Right. I think we've for so long sung about things like girl child education, and this is a conversation that many people are not willing to have. But it has sidelined the fact that there are males that are also facing the same problems. And I think just because of the lack of public appeal about it, you can't understand the numbers of males that are suffocating from this. And then that resilience or that push to always make it in life is the main reason as to why you're going to have many of them turning to a life of crime because they can't even attain basic education or sustain themselves in school. And I think even with affirmative action, there needs to be re-evaluation to understand what are the new challenges that are coming up with it. Within this education system, assess what the challenges of the students in the schools are, even far from the teachers. Because addressing the issue of the teachers alone, you're creating a sort of lag with the students. Because if teachers are being paid, if the facilities are there, and there are no people in classes, it also doesn't make sense. So I think far beyond, there is also a need to address or to tailor make policies and systems that seek to address challenges as they evolve, as they come. So with affirmative action, I feel there needs to be a lot of re-evaluation to know what the challenges are right now, why these girls or these boys are not going to school, and then also when we over glorify something, it creates blind attention to other problems forehand. I think there needs to also be attention paid to things like boy child education on just basic level. You've been able to, for example, get so many girls going to school. Is that education also at bare minimum sustainable? I've studied in the north at St. Catherine, but in a term, you would find over 5 pregnant girls. Parents are extremely adamant and saying she does not need to be in school. She needs to be in a man's house cooking. And I think these are some of the things that we don't see because of the over-glorification of what affirmative action has achieved. We focus on how it has worked out for people within urban areas or the middle-income families that have been able to attain that particular status of education. And I think that's a wrong gauge. The gauge needs to go far beyond areas that have been affected by things like war, areas that have been sidelined because of cultural beliefs, to understand, because that is where the affirmative action actually needs to exist. But then I also feel, just on bare minimum, there is need for impact from people that have been beneficiaries of the system. And that is where the whole aspect of merit or credit-based appointments come in. I think with things like affirmative action, what people don't understand is that need to sort of influence and have an impact to show why there is necessity for these things to happen. You're not going to just talk and then not go back down to the drawing board and show people that I'm a beneficiary. I've seen, I take, for example, the female MPs that have made it from the north. I have often talked about how they need to enroll programs where they go beyond showing us the students, because we are definitely motivated, but to show these parents why they need to push for. If a parent like Sui's parent is able to say, I am maneuvering all situations to make sure my child goes to school, understand what his motivation or what her motivation as a mother is. And that is what a lot of parents down in the north don't have. They are comfortable with the peace that exists, but don't want to assess what more beyond the peace is necessary. Because peace as just an aspect is overrated. If you're peaceful and you can't eat, you're peaceful and you can't earn money in your household, I think it becomes overrated and overglorified. So within that education system, things, I think
just let me interject a bit. Sorry for that. The argument that peace is the price we have to pay for us not having resources in our pockets, for us not having quality education, for us not having medicines in the hospitals, and I think that peace is not worth being peace.
It is not at all. I think it's overglorified. That is why in the beginning I said that has created a situation where people are disillusioned, and the constant need for change, if you notice, has taken a violent trail. We have the diplomatic mechanisms, things like elections, but these are systems we see have failed us, and the peace is overrated, and you feel like there needs to be a direct push, a direct approach to achieve something. So that is why you have people being violent, rioting on the streets, fighting with police officers. And I think you can't blame them. In as much as you want to blame them, you can't. Because the same way you went for the liberation war to take action, take accountability for your nation, that is exactly what people are doing. Because when you refer to your nation as your mother, the pride in saying Uganda is my mother, you can't say it, you say her. That is your pride. So I think that pride goes as far as saying the interdependence between me and my nation is on bare minimum being able to live happily. The gauge of happiness is ability to enjoy the resources, to at least get healthcare services, to get a sustainable education. The only way being in government makes sense, politics makes sense, resources that you're providing make sense, is when people understand these things. Arguing that youth don't take accountability, what is rolled out to have a civic engagement for these youth, civic education for them? These are things you are scrapping off and picking out and taking away. You're cherry picking what needs to exist in the education system, and this is in turn just damaging what it looks like for every other person. So I think just on basic standard, the solution is to reevaluate and create systems of merit and do not, I think there is also that problem of downplaying within the education system what is important and what is not. That is why teachers in the arts sector say if you're going to have that seclusion with salaries, we'll fold arms, because you feel like it is only the science students that matter. How many politicians that sit in parliament did chemistry, did biology, and all those things? No. But people who have done those subjects are going to hold you accountable to create jobs for them. So I think those teachers deserve a lot more than being downplayed, and even the students themselves deserve a lot more. So I think re-evaluation just on a large scale for the education system and for affirmative action in the education system needs to happen.
All right. Onesmus, as we wind up the conversation on education,
Yes.
38 years down the road, I'd like you to look at education institutions of higher learning. Mid 2023, the loan scheme that is given to needy students, when that loan scheme that aids needy students to join universities was suspended, not scrapped off, was just suspended on grounds that the government did not have resources.
Yeah.
So question is, our priorities straight as a government in regards to education, or we focus on other things and let the education just be there?
Ideally, I think education is very, very important in terms of development of a country generally. Like the education sector is supposed to be really, really good. But when you look at the national budget, the priorities are totally different from the actual priorities that we as a developing country are supposed to set. Our priorities on our national budget are totally different. I was looking at how much money is put in the national budget for the State House, and the president has control over 449 vehicles in his command. He has over 500 workers at State House, over 500 workers in his command. Like, it's the money we spend on military machineries, like the money we spend in the army. We spend so much in such things like security. Yes, security is important at the end of the day. Yes, it is. But we spend so much in things that don't really matter to our development as much as education can do. Education is very, very important. Okay, it's not at the level where the NRM government found it, but with the increase of the population, I feel like it's 1-1. Get, like, literally, it's like the same thing, same thing. There's nothing different the NRM really put up on ground in terms of has really put up on ground in terms of the education system, because the UPE, if you look at the rate at which UPE kids reach university, it's really, really low. Yet, like, a parent has to invest in, and yet ideally this was UPE. It was supposed to be free education, but every financial year, every student, according to the national budget, every pupil in UPE, according to the national budget, is catered for 5,000 Ugandan shillings. Now, you're catering for a needy student 5,000 Ugandan shillings, and putting up scholarships, state house scholarships every financial year worth 3 billion Ugandan shillings just for the privileged kids, the kids of the ministers, the kids of the people who know the president. You get, it's really, really,
It's discriminatory.
it doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, yes, the literacy levels have increased from 1986 up to now. Yeah, people have really gotten educated. Education institutions have been put up, but at what cost of these education institutions you're talking about, the ones that have been put in place? Recently, I was seeing the prices of school fees in these private schools, the good private schools. I looked at Namugongo, they're paying now 3 million. I looked at St. Mary's Chitende, they're paying 3.3. Namagunga, they are paying. So all those are big figures. How will an average Ugandan educate his child from Namagunga? How will an average Ugandan educate his child from SMAC? Get. How will an average Ugandan educate his child from King's College? Yes, these schools, yes, they are there. Now, the private institutions have developed too. The sector highs, yes, the education sector has developed, but at what cost? People cannot afford these. Like, you're either inside the system for you to afford this, or you cannot afford it. That's it.
All right.
Can I interject a bit? I think one thing is we also criticize these schools a lot, but we don't take into consideration what it takes to own a private school as well. So I understand the argument, and it's extremely justified that sometimes these fees are exaggerated. But I think one thing we also need to pay attention to is how much taxes are these people paying to run these schools. Far from that, we need to understand the costs of running this particular school. The people you're employing, you need to pay them. They're also not looking for underwage type of salaries. The food that you need to feed these students that are there. Because in as much as we argue that the people who can't afford this education, schools like Chitende have classes where there are over 700 students. The feeding, food is expensive, and all those costs trickle down on how much a school is going to set for its fees. And another thing, I think, when you bring it now to the government and how they should be accountable for this, is they've prioritized the private sector thriving to be able to earn income to sustain that budget. But then the problem is the priorities begin to misalign with what the intent is. So I think that is also another problem. So I think the restructuring goes far beyond the private schools and what they are doing to just the government and which, for example, economic policies they're putting into place and what the private sector is shaped to look like. So that economic aspect is also something that needs to be evaluated when it comes to education and the private sector, particularly for education.
All right. So that would then lead us to the conversation on our economy. The president keeps on saying our economy is growing at 5% per annum. I've never understood that. Maybe the economists will help us understand. But me, the economics that I know works for me is, do I have money in my pocket? How much does that money deplete? And I think that's the same that's the same economics that the ordinary Ugandan would look at. Yeah. So Fred, speaking of economics, the layman economics of, do I have enough money that can sustain me? Or I have to look for a loan somewhere to clear up something, and then look for another loan to clear up a loan. Yeah. Yes. Let's speak about that, because her argument is, people argue that private schools are very expensive. True. But the reality is you pay exorbitant taxes. Aside from paying those exorbitant taxes, which of course we're all obliged to do so, true, the cost of living is high. The prices of food is high because the prices of fuel is high. Now, everything has an effect on the other. So if fuel is at 5,500, definitely the cost of being in a particular kafunda somewhere will rise. You get? Now, that is how my economics will work for me. So now let us now put that in perspective in relation to quality of our education, but also the standard of living of Ugandans. The inflation rate is so high that a 50,000 note nowadays runs. You don't feel it. 200,000 has become like 10 bob. It just disappears. What is wrong? 10 years, 38 years in power. Yes, we are peaceful. Yes, we speak up our minds, but man, things are not. So I'm speaking from the perspective of a lay person.
True.
That's what they would say. Speak to that.
Yes, I preferably also speak like a lay person, because with things to do with figures, money, and everything as regards the financial bit of it are very instrumental, because they will dictate how people earn and also how people develop. What does it mean? Today, I think I was talking to my mom, because my little brothers are heading back to school. And the way she's frustrated about the fees, the requirements, and then the kids' upkeep as well, is too much. But what brings about this? I think we are, as a country, there is something that went wrong and we have failed maybe to tackle it. one of the key points in the 10-point program for NRM, the moment they took over power, was to make sure that at least we have that economic stability. But it's going out of hand.
Yeah.
And I think I'll just put this to the rate of corruption, the rate of embezzlement, and misappropriation of funds or public funds is too much. That wherever this money is misused, the way it comes back to the what? To the people. There is a lot of illegal money in supply. What does that call for? That they have to call back this money in order to stabilize the economy. But it makes money scarce.
Yeah.
Right? So even the value of the money is too down. That just merely 200 right now, if it is given to you as a university student, trust me, it cannot take you for 2 weeks and above. We are meaning that comfortable life, not stressing over. I'll eat. I'll take I maybe go for katogo of 2,000 for lunch, of which you don't know how safe it is. I mean hygiene, the hygiene, and where it is cooked from. If I'm look at the economy versus our education system, the main problem here is that, as she asserted, that these people who set up these private institutions, they set them up using money. That is one. If you are to get a classroom as good as this particular studio, where your kid of 3 years can be comfortable as if she or he is home, literally takes what? Money. These schools will need first and foremost to employ nannies. These are not teachers, but nannies. They'll need to have furnished washrooms for the better health of these kids. They'll need to have toys outside all over the compound for these kids, for their comfort and for a proper learning environment. What does that explain? It means that you are paying for every service your kid does what? Gets.
I think
You get it? So, I'm speaking about the layman, but this particular kindergarten is only for that person in the middle class. We are forgetting the other lady, Subi's mom, who can't even be able to pay 200 for secondary.
I think you're underestimating the value of this money as tuition in these private institutions. The truth is, this money is exaggerated. Personally, I had the chance to study in a traditional school and in private schools. When I was in a traditional school in my senior one, we paid tuition of 780,000 up to our senior 4.
Yes.
Namiliango. When I went to A level, we started paying 1.8. These are figures I had never seen, and yet comparing the services I used to get in these two schools, they're totally different.
We just made mention. One was private, one was what?
Well, traditional. No.
Exactly.
Yes, here I'm paying 780.
Yes.
Here 1.8. But first of all, the feeding in private schools is also not so good.
But the cost of living is high, and that is
I think what I'm
Second of all,
no, first listen to this.
There is no
what
value
I'm
for this exaggerated
what I'm explaining.
figures. That's my point.
What I'm explaining is typically different from what you understood.
Sure.
You get it? An example is the cost of posho, right? Posho is of different qualities. You get it? The posho you ate at one school, trust me, right now it is not at the same cost. And then too, the ownership of those schools are different. And there are of the goals. One is profit-oriented, right? Another one has at least an aspect of patriotism.
Even aside
You
from
get
that,
it?
when you look at a traditional school, whose responsibility is it to pay the teachers in Namibyango? And then whose responsibility is it to pay the teachers in a private school? There is
So we
that.
You get it?
So let's conclude that
And the quality of the
private
teachers
schools are
also
actually
matters.
businesses.
They are businesses.
That is why it's a private school.
And at times, listen, and they are also registered as private companies.
Exactly.
There
You
is a
find some
private
even
company.
having the word limited at the end. You get their businesses, and if they're businesses, as a business owner, you have to make
Profits.
sure your business
That
is
is the end
visible
goal.
and visible.
Aside from that, I think one thing we are also downplaying is just the fact that you're profit oriented is incentive for you to create quality.
And that is what most private schools do.
Exactly the
So
point.
what do? They have to heighten the tuition or the fees to make sure that they can sustain the quality and as well output good service. You get it? That is what we are heading to. And the main problem here, I'm saying it is not from these particular owners of these schools, but from the government failing to curtail some mannerisms that are bringing out these issues.
Exactly.
What are those mannerisms? The misappropriation of funds. Now, if all government schools were, if the monies that are allocated to given, for example, secondary government schools was going there wholesomely, trust me, very many parents wouldn't have opted for private secondary schools. Are you getting what I'm saying? If it wasn't for corruption, that usually money would be passed and money would also be put out to do certain something in the education system, and that money doesn't is not chopped at every level. Trust me, we wouldn't have this fight of fees, because these private schools would even be putting up a lot of incentives to attract what?
Customers,
Students or
exactly,
customers.
yes.
You get it? But the problem are not the owners of the schools, but the problem is the failure of the government to make sure that the government-oriented education system, most of the UPE system, the seed secondary schools, and also the universities, the government universities, literally are managed well. But the moment that fails, the supervision fails, right? The checking of the misappropriation of funds fails. It means, like it or not, very many customers are going to opt for private, and for the private institutions to compete well on the market, they have to make sure everything they give out is quality, and to produce quality, you need what?
Money. I think just to back up that, you realize that with universities, there's a bigger incentive and struggle to get into a public university as opposed to a private university. I think that is a weighing scale enough to show you
True,
the difference.
But yes, nonetheless, let's just quickly go for a short break. But tonight we've been discussing 38 years of the NRM government in power, and students have been giving their views and perspectives. And as you've been watching, I've been joined by a very, very eloquent and very robust panel. We shall just go quickly for a short break. We'll be right back. Thank you.
National Water and Sewage Corporation is committed to providing cost-effective, clean, safe and reliable quality water and sewage solutions in urban centers across Uganda. National Water and Sewage Corporation reaffirms its commitment to 100% service coverage, geographical expansion, infrastructure development, water quality, pro-poor initiatives, customer care and stakeholder engagement, catchment and water source protection. Be a water hero. Pay your bills to zero balance. Report all leaks, busts, and illegal water connections to enable us serve you better. Reach us through our toll-free numbers on 0800 200 977 or 0800 300 977. You can also communicate with us through any of our online platforms or visit the National Water and Sewage Corporation office nearest to you. This message is brought to you by National Water and Sewage Corporation.
Welcome back from that break. Right before we went into the break, we were talking about students' perspective on the 38-year rule of the NRM government. And just before we concluded the first half of the conversation, we focused or premised the arguments on governance, on education, and then just before we went off, we were talking about the economy. And I think that is where we're going to pick up the conversation from. So I'll just quickly then get to Cynthia. Cynthia, the economics that works, as Ramadan Gori likes to put it. He was a lecturer at your university, Makerere University Business School. Let's pick the economics that works. And he promised that he would deliver the economics that works, but I don't know how far that promise has gone to yield the reality.
His promise is since dead.
So that's the economics that works is one that the ordinary person is in position to attain the basics of life. Medical, health, the basics, of which today we have people or persons dying in Karamoja because of hunger.
True.
We have children or people actually themselves not accessing medical facilities because government hospitals do not have medicine, people dying and all that. So speaking about the economics that works, 38 years down the road, is the economics working?
I think that you put it, speaking on the economics that works and not the technicalities. I think the main problem as to why the economics is not actually working to the basic understanding of layman is the aspect of corruption. You will find that in as much as government prioritizes certain things like the health systems per se, and tries to roll out avenues to make sure that people are able to access these services to the lowest level, like health center 2s, health center 1s, I think there is a big aspect of corruption that needs to be addressed, because the money is availed, the equipment is availed, but it disappears in thin air somehow, somewhere. So that the element of corruption is something that really needs to be worked on. And for corruption to be worked on, the standard of living needs to measure up. Because we have a very high standard of living, people are trying to survive as much as they can. So they are going to take that. It's not even an excuse, but it's just a fact of what happens. That people will take advantage of the positions that they have to just measure up to the standard of living that is there, or the type of life they've created at bare minimum. So I think to eradicate corruption, the economic policies that are implemented need to be able to address the reason as to why corruption will exist, like the high standards of living, the exorbitant taxes. I think it starts from reprioritizing what we as a country and as economy need. That means panel beating to see if Kenya is doing well in this particular aspect, what is it per se that we as Uganda need to change, right? Because just by virtue of being within the same economic region, subscribing to things like EAC, I think this should be metrics to panel beat in order to improve our economy. It doesn't kill to borrow ideas to better something. So I think those economic policies need to go through scrutiny and panel beating so that you create a system where you prioritize what is necessary for your citizens. You know, some things can be good, some policies can be good. The problem is they may not be what we need. So that sort of panel beating to prioritize what we need needs to happen so that there is a level up on the standard of living, and then you can begin to work on things like corruption. That is when those economics can begin to make sense and can begin to appeal to what the people need. I think that's my basic understanding of it.
All right. Onesmus,
Yes.
I just want us to quickly wind up on this issue of economics. And maybe you're a student of accounting as well. From where you sit and from the lenses of an economist, she makes an argument that corruption is that vice that is eating up what would make the economics work. What is your opinion to the same?
Economically speaking, we are looking at the 38 year, right? Looking at the economy of Uganda of 1978, the economy of Uganda of 1986, and 2024, I think it has evolved negatively. Okay, speaking like realistically, it has evolved negatively. Yes, we have been able to expand our tax base. Yeah, the money gets collected, yes, but the utilization of this money, you cannot justify for the utilization of this money. Last year our budget was 52 billion. I saw this year it cut by some amounts. So the reason we are cutting it is because we don't have money. Get, and yet the tax base is increasing. But I'll still stick to the fact that the whole system just needs to be filtered. That's the only way our economy can get back to progressing. These figures they be giving us of 5% development, 5%
Annual growth.
I don't think these figures can be justified. It is paperwork. Recently I saw
It is justified.
Recently, I saw Honorable Semuju's minority report last week. His minority report against the national budget, because the PSST, they had presented the budget framework, but the figures were not tallying. The figures within the budget framework are not the actual amount at the end. They will tell you this is 5 billion, this is 6 billion, this is 7 billion. Now here we have 50 billion. Like, it's not correlating. So I feel like the whole system just needs to be filtered for our economy to
Thrive.
stand out and thrive. But other than that, Ugandans have tried their best. There has been more privatization.
Yeah.
People have gone to school. We have a lot of human labor. We have labor available. This labor is underutilized. The government has failed to utilize this labor. And I feel like it's supposed to be the government. No, blame it to the government. It's supposed to supposed to be in position to utilize the labor it produces.
All right, Fred. He's blaming the government for not utilizing the labor. Our country has very many young people. In Africa, we are is it number 3, number 2 in terms of the youngest country in the continent.
Population.
Yeah, and that presents us with two things: either a population bulge or a dividend. So if it's a bulge, that means it's both good and bad.
True.
It's good if the population is properly utilized and given the opportunities and harnessed their potential. We have a population that is greatly unemployed, that do not have the capacity to even raise meager money to sustain them. And yet, we have many young people who are in that productive age.
True.
That could push this country forward in terms of remitting towards the national basket of this country. Unfortunately, they're unemployed. This government came into power with visions of providing job employment opportunities, education, because education is a process of nurturing and training the labor force, which
True.
I think, on a scale of 1 to 10, we're really on a 6. They've done some good work
True.
in terms of training the labor force, but have they provided the opportunities? The piece that the president made mention about in his speech, he talked about investors can now come in.
True.
Investors are coming in, but still the employment rate is rising. What can the government maybe do differently to tap into this population bulge that we have in the young people to push this country forward?
First and foremost, I will not have any good words as regards how the government has literally handled the young population or its young population. First and foremost, we have the aspect of modern slavery that is ongoing, and literally there is an online campaign to at least curb that. I think it's led by Dr. Spire. And this comes out of the fact that, yes, on a rate of 10, the government can get a 6 for literally educating its young population.
Which is fair enough,
Right?
I think.
It is fair. But the question is, which quality of education are we getting? We are training job seekers. At the end of the day, after these job seekers have been fully trained, they need jobs, right? But we are not training job creators. Our education system was tailor-made to train people to be employed somewhere, but not to train people to do something, to make an impact. We have a few professional courses that literally make sense. If you look at most of the courses, people or students in year 2 will realize that they will have no title or not even a job description, but they will just be fixed somewhere at a workstation to do something. What does that talk to us as the young generation, as the young population of Uganda, is that the education system is not in our favor. That is why you are seeing very many of us are more interested in modern slavery. Literally, we consent to being exported. And our government, stupidly, is very, very happy that it is it is the largest labor exporter. But which quality of labor are you exporting? You are exporting house girls, right? Because if I use the word house manager, it would be too sweet, because a house manager is trained literally. But a house girl, this is a person who sat senior 6 or who did a course at university but has failed to get a job. So he decides to go to wash for an Arab, clean the elderly, right? Or try to drive around an Arab. But for how much? For 800,000, that in Uganda, literally, that money can no longer buy a piece of land anywhere. You get it? At the end of the day, when this money is being brought back into the country, it is taxed. This young boy sends it back home to do some good work. The mother or the father or any relative misuses it. What does it mean? First and foremost, our young generation is of no great impact. Yes, we are strong, but our energy has nothing to do. It cannot be tapped in, it cannot be exploited to put to the development or to help develop our country. Because however much you have energy, but this energy is not well directed, it is useless. That is how you end up, you cannot walk with your small phone on the street past 2, literally past 8, literally, because you're going to be beaten and it's going to be taken away. You get it? That's why we are seeing very many young boys engaging in strikes and demonstrations. But if you ask them, what are you demonstrating for? We don't have jobs. Who has to give you the jobs? Like, no, let us demonstrate to Koye. We are tired of everything. The youngest generation, it is not helping anything as regards productivity, because the kind of training we get, it is training job seekers, yet the government cannot even provide those jobs. It is inviting in foreign investors, but do you know the agreements they sign? They end up bringing their own what? Countrymen to work. Look at the oil sector. Do you remember when the Northern Bypass was being made? How many blacks did you see on those white collar jobs there? Our boys were only there to push wheelbarrows and they maybe mark the lines. But even the people that were, even the labor force that was driving those particular trucks, bringing in everything, were Chinese. What does that explain to us? The government has abandoned the young generation, typically from the funny education system. That is 1. 2, it has been made too expensive to us. Then 3, they have brought up different programs that are literally useless. PDM, you're giving a person 1 million to do what? You have not trained them on how to use this money. This person has never even got a million, giving them a million without education. At the end of the day, what is he going to use it? What can I say? Lastly, or in conclusion, is that yes, the generation is young, we are strong, but many of us, our energies cannot be utilized or cannot make any positive impact on our nation because we have been trained to be job seekers. That is 1. The other main point is that even when the population is young, since we have failed to get our jobs home, we are now consenting to modern slavery. We are going to clean houses of Arabs. We are going to clean snow in other countries. Many people are even risking being illegal migrants in other countries. What does that talk to us? During these 38 years, we are now suffering as the youth because, as she said, the solutions that were developed at the initiation of this government are no longer applicable. We need sustainable solutions. We need solutions that can mutate. If the problem mutates, let the solution also do what?
Mutate.
But if it doesn't, it means that now the solution can no longer serve the purpose. So our young population is suffering, is yet to suffer, will suffer until our government wakes up and gets sustainable solutions to the problems affecting the youth. Other than that, we don't need money because money is timely. But we need at least a shift in the education system. We don't need a programmer to go to university. We can have a programmer starting from as early as senior 1.
Not senior
We
1.
can have even institutes. Primary. We don't need to go up there.
Training an engineer from primary.
From primary. We need a shift in our education system. Why do we need PE? Those are co-curricular activities. Why is it a course unit? Why is it a subject? I think they know that the generation is too strong and can do anything to them.
Yeah, I think adding to that, there's a very big issue with career development in Uganda. In that we are students, we are studying to have a bright future, yes. Let's say you're now in primary 7, you're eyeing to be a doctor. The students, I feel like students don't get enough career guidance to guide them throughout all that, like exposure. We're not exposed as how we are supposed to be. The best we have gotten is internet, which I think is only between the people who study from Central. Is it? If it's only between the people who study in these good elite schools.
The internet
but
penetration is quite poor.
Yeah, but looking at schools, the USEs, the UPEs, they don't have access to these things. Now, career guidance, I feel like career guidance needs to be touched such that if we are to train a doctor, we're training a doctor from P1, we're training a doctor at senior 1, the same person is being trained as a doctor senior 6, and the same person goes direct to how he can.
But you see, there's also
become
an
doctor.
argument to that. When I don't say this on air, but let me say it. When as a child, I wanted to be a priest who is a lawyer. Yeah. I wanted to be a priest who is a lawyer. And guess what? Guess what? One of the two is what I'm pursuing now. I had that talk.
A priest.
No, I am pursuing my bachelor's of law. Okay. And at the moment, my passion of becoming a priest slowly phased out. What am I trying to say? That as we grow, we see things, we learn things, and we evolve. Career guidance is good, yes. I do agree with that. But also the time at which we think maybe we should start, because the argument from way back, I think it's too early. So we need to put a time frame to that. But nonetheless, career guidance is very important.
Yeah, okay, look at senior 4. Senior 4 personally, which there I did biology, I did physics, but I wasn't interested in those things.
All right. He made mention of the point, which is on the
We are
aspect
studying things
to
that
do
are
with our
not
curriculum.
useful to us.
It is useful to someone, but nonetheless.
How is biology helping you?
No, but at least
Chemistry.
no, it's okay. Let's just have Cynthia come in briefly. Cynthia, let's take the conversation on his two arguments: labor export, and the first one to do with we have a system that focuses on creating job seekers than creators. What's your say?
So, one, I think these are things that we've meticulously discussed over time, the whole aspect of an education system that creates job seekers. I think even from just the primary debates when we were still in primary school, these are things we've talked about. And I think that's where I draw the line, and that's where I have a problem. Is we discuss these things for 10 years, 15 years, and then we are not trying to solve anything within that system. The overturn is not going to come at once.
Yeah.
So I think the better argument to have is just from the beginning of what sort of economic policies exist. I think he draws a very perfect argument when he talks about the agreements that are signed between investors and domestic nations, right? For example, which agreements are signed between Uganda and China. I think a safe argument is to say we as Ugandans have competent engineers.
True.
The argument is to say we as Ugandans have competent, let me say, for example, from civil to electric engineers that can actively participate in the work that happens. Look at how far UPDF has gone, I think, with the construction of the stadium, right? So can these arguments go as far as making sure these countries do not have to bring their labor in? Even if they are to do so, what are the percentage outweighs when you do that? Like I said, what now happens is that constant within government is creating that disillusionment. I mean, by the time someone is willing to take the risk to be an illegal migrant somewhere else to make money, not for luxury, but for survival, that should speak a lot. So in as much as there are these campaigns to say, oh, we don't have to be modern slaves and things like that, you're not going to take them away when there is no alternative that to like run to. So we are going to have those rants on Twitter. We are going to have those rants on Facebook. But are the people on Facebook actually the ones going to put their lives at risk there? No. That is why you will see those girls on TikTok making these videos, and they'll cry for the suffering that they are going through, but they are willing to meticulously go through it for the survival of the people they are living back at home. I think the conversation on what constitutes the suffering people go through is far wide.
Yeah.
And my problem is people are expecting an overturn at once, which is a problem. So can we have like institutional or systematic changes that address the problems that are there? Create a sort of sustainable impact that we are able to speak on for generations to come. I made an argument earlier and said a policy can solve something now and then not address the problem the other time. But also, I think there needs to be a metric to show that this policy does not create a bigger problem in the future. Because sometimes the problem is evolves, but it is evolving as a stem of a policy that you created. So which means that the solutions cannot even come to terms with the problems that are being created. So the better argument is, let's stop expecting an overwhelming overturn at once.
Right.
Let's institute those systematic changes. If the problem is the education system, what is it that can be done to improve that education system now? The argument is we need career guidance. Then let's have that career guidance. Let's not wait to complain for 15 years and so we need change to expect a volcano to erupt and eradicate that entire system or that entire citizenry, then we have a new outcome. I think that is what sometimes people overwhelmingly expect, which is not what is going to happen. So there needs to be a concession to the reality. And then the last thing I'd like to say is an evaluation and monitoring system is extremely key to any developing economy. I've seen excellent programs that have been instituted by World Bank in conjunction with the Ministry of Finance. The aspect of seed schools, the aspect of the U-Gift project, where you have farms for like people within the northern region, western region, reconstructing staff quarters, things like that. You go to some regions and money has been given to the local to the local government for a farm to be established somewhere. And you will go there, and for like desert regions or semi-desert regions, there are like irrigation schemes that are necessary, and you go there and the only credible thing you'll find is a pipe. What happens? The LC5 chairperson and the rest of the people in his cahoots chewed the money. It never reached its purpose. And this is money that we have to be accountable for at the end of the day. This is money that is coming in form of grants, donations to address what necessity you have as a country. I think if on bare minimum, you can't give accountability, you can't monitor for a gift you're being given, how are you going to be able to monitor or evaluate for your own hard-earned money, for the citizens' taxes? I think that evaluation system really needs to be put in place.
Perfect. We've almost reached the end of our show. I'll just quickly I'll start with you, Onesmus. In 60 seconds, you can give us your recommendations and concluding remarks.
Firstly, I would like to say thank you very much for hosting me here. I'm very glad to be on this platform and to network with great minds and experience something new, leadership. On the 38-year rule, commenting on the 38-year rule, I think Uganda can do better. Uganda can do better. That's what I think. Uganda can do better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We can do better indeed. Cynthia?
Thank you very much, Drake. Aside from talking about you being a priest, this was
oh wow! Anyway, that is what happened. But now I'm a very strong Christian. Nonetheless,
yes. Aside from discussing how Drake wanted to be a priest, I think this has been an engaging panel, and I think major takeaways is just to have that engagement on civic education and understanding how we can have systematic improvements, and just understanding that the change is not going to overwhelmingly happen at once, but to institute small policies, or what we'd call policies that go ahead to create a sustainable impact and create just on bare minimum the change that is necessary. My takeaway from the 38 years is nothing comes easy. It is all about hard work. But aside from that, don't outlive your usefulness. I think that is my main thing. Do not outlive your usefulness.
Powerful. Fred,
Thank you, Drake.
I don't have kind words for the government.
For those watching, we are very happy that you already spare your time to watch and listen to us. And to my fellow panelists, I'm happy and glad that we had to share a lot, which is sensible and also very challenging, because as we come here, we learn and also unlearn a few things. So I'm glad that we always come and unpack a lot and then also go away with something. And as we conclude this discussion, I want to talk to the fellow youth out there and tell them that the moment you wait for the government to make up something, it is like waiting for luck, but you're not
Definitely.
ready,
True.
right? So the best thing would be to make yourself ready, equip yourself with the necessary skill, or whether it is through education or any other kind of training. And at the end of the day, when the government wakes up and does what it has to do, trust me, you'll be able to fit into the structure. Other than that, the moment you sleep with your entire generation. Because as our elders are phasing out, for us we have to be strong, and we must have an improved mind on the way we see things, and also interpret and assess every matter at hand. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching us.
Thank you. It's been a very engaging panel, I must say. Very energetic, very powerful, and very thrilling. I've enjoyed having this conversation. 38 years down the road, pose a question: they said they would build a future we cherish? So we shall wait, because when they came into power, provided us with a 10-point program and presented very, very good ideas, which I think they've actually implemented. But then the question is what she says: do not live to outlive your usefulness. So get back to the drawing board and come up with more robust and engaging policies that have everyone included and give us sustainable solutions. Otherwise, my name is Douglas Onen. I've been your host or moderator for tonight's conversation. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.